Just so everyone knows, this is a program brought to you by American Society of Media Photographers, the Pittsburgh chapter and Philadelphia chapter. And ASMP is a premier trade association for photographers. They're the industry leader in promoting photographers' rights, providing education and better business practices, producing business publications for photographers, and helping to connect clients with professional photographers. You can become a member at asmp.org. Or if you're looking to hire photographers, you can hire one at findaphotographer.org. I'm very excited to have Miss Carolyn Potts with us today, creative consultant. When it comes to portfolio reviews, Miss Carolyn Potts has seen it all and done it all. She's created thousands of portfolio presentations for the stable of photographers she represented during her 35-year career as an artist rep. And these presentations need to be effectively designed so as to get her photographers the assignments they wanted. Since she became a full-time creative consultant and coach over 10 years ago, Carolyn has been a frequent portfolio reviewer at numerous photo festivals and portfolio review events. She did hundreds of in-person reviews for multiple chapters of the ASMP as well as APA, and was a reviewer at the Palm Springs Photo Festival in California and in New York City. During the past 2 COVID pandemic years, she's pivoted to doing virtual reviews for those same organizations. And when it comes to photographers presenting their work, whether it's in person or on a Zoom screen, she knows what works and what doesn't. Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here. And I just want to say a couple things about both ASMP and Pittsburgh Philly chapter. This is kind of an interesting circle back. It was back in 2008 or 9, I believe, when the late great Susan Carr, the education director, some of you may remember her, invited me to do the trial run of what was the beginning of my speaking engagements. I had a talk back then called Rebooting Your Business Brain, and I tried it out in Pittsburgh, and that became the beginning of me doing talks for chapters across the country to ASMP chapters. And so I have a special fondness for that, first stage, first one. And it was really, I got to meet so many people in the chapter, and I just had the best time. And so I'm very happy to come back to you guys. I sure wish it was in person, because I was delighted to be there. But here we are in these strange times, and I'm happy to do this. And I hope I can provide the same benefit as when we're together in person again. I also wanted to say a little something about ASMP and how valuable it is for any people that may not be members or lapsed or whatever. Because today I had something come into sharp relief on how valuable a organization like ASMP is. Any community is good to be a member of, but there's something really wonderful about ASMP. Today, I was helping a client who had an issue with a blatant copyright infringement of their work. And it was really blatant. And I reached out to another of my clients in the state where the infringer was headquartered to just ask if they had any information, blah, blah, blah. What I would say, my point is that within an hour, I had information from him. He'd reached out to another ASMP network, person in his network in another city in the state, and 2 people in the state where the photographer who has enduring the infringement had local ASMP people helping them. And so within a matter of an hour, there were all these resources and perspectives that were brought to bear on how to go forward effectively in protecting the photographer's rights and putting, the client on notice. So I just want to say I'm, for photographers that might be, thinking I don't need a community. Well, sometimes it's when you get into trouble, it's really good to have some support. Sometimes your gear breaks down on the way to an important shoot, and you're just a phone call away from a friend that'll say, don't worry, I'll be there, I'll lend it to you. And I just want to emphasize that in these times when there seems to be such divisiveness, that this community and this real time demonstration of how immediately generous photographers in other states were to come to give some info. I just want to say thank you. Okay, so
Yeah. Well, with that said, that is another reason why I love ASMP is we get to do wonderful programs like this, where even though many of us might be competitors, we are also in it together and want to make sure that our competition is healthy and that we can kind of work off each other and grow together as not just a local community, but as a community in whole. And with that said, getting our pictures reviewed can be a little daunting or scary, or maybe we don't quite understand what a review can be. So my first question to you, Carolyn, is what should we creatives expect from a portfolio review, and how do we get the responses that we're kind of looking for?
okay, so that's a big question that has many parts that need to be defined first. So let's talk about the two kinds of reviews. There's the kind of speed dating review that is happening now online virtually. Many chapters, I mean, I'm going to be part of your April 6th reviews. They're around the country. Other chapters are having that. And then there's the in-person review, the same kind of speed dating review that hopefully we'll get back to. I think Palm Springs said that they're hoping to get back to in person in September of this year, pandemic numbers willing. And then there's the portfolio review when you're actually sitting in front of or having a one-on-one Zoom meeting with someone who is completely devoted to you in that time. And you've made an appointment and they're going to look at your work and it's going to be the beginning of that relationship. So each of those different categories has slightly different needs and expectations. So I guess I want to take my first poll here. What are people most concerned with? The upcoming speed dating events, that this is kind of the spring speed dating events that are coming up, or in person pitching to a client, or what? So how many are would like info tonight about the speed dating prep on the Zoom virtual reviews coming up? If you could raise your little reaction hand down there, or your physical hand. Okay, and how many want just in general, how do I present myself better?
And that would be present myself in general, not just in a review, but going forward in meetings.
Well, presenting your portfolio.
Mhm.
Okay, okay, so there's the general.
That's a pretty big mix. I think maybe everyone's kind of worried about the speed dating and how they showcase themselves in such a short amount of time. And how do you make those connections quickly?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So you only, the first thing that I would say, and I'll go into this more in depth, but this speed date you're having, I'm stating the obvious, is with another human being, not a purchase order that is pasted on a human. And so many times photographers lose sight of that, and they are so filled with their own concerns, worries, and agenda to make a good impression so they can get hired, that they lose the present moment. They're imagining the future, like, will I work with them? Or they're awfulizing the past, like, oh, I remember where I just really tanked when I was presenting to an art buyer at a big agency. I don't know if I can do it to another art buyer. They're so powerful. So they're, awfulizing the past or imagining the future, and that's not really real. So any of you who heard my marketing and mindfulness talks, it's that two-pronged approach really is the key to success. And I have to tell you that, that being able to be present first and foremost, fully with yourself and with the person that's on the other side of the screen or the table has more likelihood of you creating a successful portfolio presentation and event than any format that your portfolio is in, any web platform, any number of images, any of that stuff pales in comparison with the impact you will have if you're fully present with the other person on the other side. And if you are fully present, you'll be able to listen, you'll be able to ask relevant follow-up questions, you'll be able to stay out of your head and just really feeling connected to that other person. And we all know, I just want to remind people, we know when we're in the presence of a sales rep, like going to like some kind of a store, and they could give a rat's ass, excuse me, about your real needs for, a new TV, which model's better for you. And it's just like, get you in, get you out. They're not listening. They don't, and you can tell they don't care. They're pretending they're present. And then, the other times when you've had those random acts of wandering into some retail store and you've had this kind of help from somebody that you felt like they really did want to make sure you bought the right thing that was right for you or your family.
Mhm.
And what was the impact that had on you, on that brand? I mean, we all know this, but we forget this. We forget that kind of generosity, compassion, and presence can be so powerful. And the reason we lose track of that, and this is where the mindfulness comes in, is because we're afraid. And this is a neuroscience thing. And those of you who know me know that I'm a real neuroscience geek. I just love reading about that stuff too. How can we be more effective? And just taking 10 slow, deep breaths right before the event will take you out of the lizard part of your brain called the amygdala, the fight or flight, the one that's worrying and awfulizing and not in the present, and boot you back up into your prefrontal cortex, or the later part of your brain that has evolved over time, which can control your fear and your anxiety. It's a real simple brain hack. You don't have to sit down and meditate. All you have to do is this slow, deep breath, and you will get out of fight or flight, which is probably an expected response when you're worried about someone liking you. So I invite you to, bring that into the mix before every one of those meetings, is just put a sticky note on your monitor, 10 breaths before you hit the open button. Elliot, do you have some experience with that?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say it's good to have well, I should tell everyone that I talk to Carolyn often, probably. So it's been a couple years now, actually. I've been working with Carolyn, and she's always on me to take those breaths and settle myself. And every time I don't do it, I find myself in trouble. And every time I do it, I find success. So putting little sticky notes around, and it's also encouraging to make sure you have your notes prepared before you enter into that room, because it leads me to the next question is finding the reviewer that's going to give you the best result to what you're looking for, whether that's a relationship or to actually look at your work and give responses
Right.
to if you're moving down the right path. That even having notes on who they are and what they've done, so you can respond properly, is good. So I guess my question is, how do we make sure that we pair ourselves up with the reviewer?
Right. So again, okay, so this gets back again to the different, saying you're a photographer is a really big tent. how many, it's research, but I'd like to know who I'm talking to here. How many would define themselves as commercial or advertising photographers? Raise your hand. And how many would define themselves as editorial or corporate? And I can't tell the other people who just have their names, but so I guess I'll just say general is that the needs and expectations of those two different major sectors are slightly different. And the way you present is slightly different. But what remains is, in this internet age, you can do so much research about somebody before you meet with them. Even some random stuff, like if they got, if they went to art school, if they went to photo school. I mean, I was on a webinar the other day with, what was it? I guess the Nat Geo Kids editor. She talked about her training as a photographer. And, that gives you an insight as to what their bias is, what their sophistication level is in terms of imagery. But you can assume that, if you're presenting to advertising or commercial, these buyers or art directors are on teams, high stress, high demand. They want to be able to cut to the chase, find out the pigeonhole that you have that might meet their needs when they have a job. So that's where your website or your presentation, if you're pitching to those people, they need to have the pigeonholes that make sense to them, like location, portraits, people, product, lifestyle, the general kinds of buckets that could match their needs. If you're, that's why creative taxonomy, do people know what I mean by taxonomy? The way something, the subjects, the categories on your website or in your presentation is just like in the zoo, there's the mammals and the amphibians and the road, so those have to make sense to the commercial and advertising world. And they generally, like on the workbook, hi Linda, there are categories that are not misty moods or exuberant, they're really straight up categories: lifestyle, portrait, action, whatever. So make sure that if you're going for advertising and commercial, your presentation has your images in a way that makes sense to have somebody who's got a nanosecond to vet 5 people to present to their team that then goes further to be presented to the client. If you are, if you're editorial, then you can have different categories that would have more, project names that would be recognizable, that would lead somebody to, refugees or homeless or elders or agriculture or, things like that, where there would be stories where they would be able to find out how that might relate to their projects.
Well, I know we're going to have some like galleries and art. We have some artists who do, that maybe they've turned fine art or they found a love inside that element, but they also do commercial or editorial work. When they're showcasing their images, would you ever want to mix and match? If you're on a commercial with a commercial person, you also do dabble in art. Would you want to showcase that at all, or would you want to strictly keep yourself in the lane?
No, I would say that would be, I would not mix it in the main galleries, but you could put it in another gallery called personal work for those clients, or even fine art. But if you personal work for the presentation to the advertising commercial people is probably better, because fine art is such a big tent that then they might think, well, which are you? Because you could be a very successful fine artist. So if you're not, I mean, you know, beware of the dabbling thing. So, but personal can have some of that work, and that gives the person an insight into what you really do from the heart.
And I know you always say people do business with those they know, like, and trust. And, you know, being able to find that connection with other people can be difficult and on screen compared to, you know, when we're in person. You can feel the body language. You know, there's a difference about being present. How should we present ourselves along with our work? So you're saying have a website ready or a gallery ready for the specific people, so you can move through easily. But what about ourselves? You know, I have a complete mess behind me. Is this appropriate, or should I,
Well,
you
for
know,
me,
put a tie on? No.
I mean, no, for me, and again, I like to see the chaos that is behind you. I feel like, oh, a pack rat, oh, another creative. It's a bond, because in my repping days, I went to so many art directors' offices, and they were like crazy clutter items, but that's advertising. So you're safe there. I am not in my former second bedroom, which looks more like your office. I'm in my living room pandemic. So I look a lot more together. So what I'm saying is that you can, like Linda, if you have a background, if you're meeting with corporate and you feel like you just want to look a little less crazy creative, because corporate is more fear-based than aspiration-based. Those are two other big, you know, delineators. Advertising and design, they're aspirational, and corporate tends to be a little more fear-based in that they want an ROI on their investment in a vendor. The art directors want to win an award by using you. So showing that you're a fellow crazy creative, if you're pitching to an art director, would be fine. If you're doing a brand manager at a corporation, a multi-million-dollar corporation, you might want, nobody wears a tie as a creative. Don't do that. So, but you might want to blur your background or pick your favorite Zoom screen, because that might be distracting.
Yeah. Well, I know, you know, like just myself recently, I've been doing financial things. So depending on the company or who I'm talking to, I'll wear a tie, or I'll, you know, comb my hair more appropriately, blur the background. And then when I'm talking to the nitty gritty people, it doesn't necessarily matter. So maybe being aware of who we're talking to and their styles and their personalities can help drive us to how we should present ourselves.
Absolutely. And you can find out a lot about that, you know, on LinkedIn. You can get a sense if somebody's conservative or not. But I'm surprised, Elliot. I just don't know any photographer that's gone that bridge of putting on a tie. I'm saying, guys, I've never felt like that made the difference or not in a portfolio presentation. And I would think that for most photographers, putting on a tie would make them so uncomfortable and not make them feel like themselves in their own skin. I would recommend against it.
There you go. So be yourself, more importantly.
Absolutamente.
Be yourself.
You need to attract the people and create the relationship with the people that respond to the real you.
So when we're in the review and we're showcasing our work, I know a lot of times we like, when we're showing something, creatives can be very quick to make an excuse about what they're showing, or if I only had more time, or I wish I would have had this, or X, Y, and Z. How do we prepare ourselves to listen and make sure we're not setting ourselves up for those, as you're cutting ourselves off? How do we ensure that we're not going to behave that way?
Do some breathing. Because again, that is insecurity manifesting as talking too much and saying stuff that is not relevant because you're too close to the backstory. in most cases, that woulda, shoulda, coulda is irrelevant to what they're looking at. I have seen photographers trip over themselves by doing just that thing when I saw an image that I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but it didn't match what was in their head when they were on the assignment. So they feel like they had to justify because it wasn't what was in their head and it didn't turn out that way. And they just showed me an insecurity or a, leaving the present moment that hurt them more than if that shot turned out the way they wanted it to.
Mm-hmm. And it I remember the first time you were looking through my work, you picked a picture that you said, oh, this is wonderful, you should put it on the front. And it's the one picture I absolutely hate, because it's exactly what you said. It didn't look the way I wanted to, it didn't do everything, but you know what, everyone likes it, everyone enjoys it. So being able to just listen and take it in is very important, because even though we have our own struggles of what we could have done, or if I only had more time, I could have been better. Sometimes we are missing. It's having a friend or a consultant kind of look through your work and make sure that you're picking the right images to show, because we can be very biased towards our own work. What do you suggest we do to make sure that we are, or what can a creative do to make sure they're showing their best work?
Okay, so that first thing we talked about there is being too close to the backstory is the single biggest impediment to having your best work sometimes being presented. We are all too close to ourselves to be able to edit for ourselves. I needed the help of others when I, first shifted from repping to consulting, because I didn't know who I really was as how I was coming across. And I thought if I wrote this, that would be fine. You need a group of trusted advisors, a pair of fresh eyes that you can show your work to, and include the ones that you go, I would say the thing that happens a lot when I'm editing work and selecting work is that this kind of Calvinistic work ethic of you'd have to really struggle to get that, to achieve it, makes photographers put those pictures up front. Like, it was so hard to get that shot, and then they overlook the shots that just happened in an instant, that came to them because there was no struggle. And I try to educate photographers that coming to an image in an instant, just like that, with no struggle, is your true self being channeled through you, your muse speaking with your head completely out of the way, and you being fully present in the moment. Yep. So you judging it as it was too easy, I can't tell you countless times, because I make people show me the stuff that they don't want to show me. And you're a prime example where their genius is often overlooked by their work ethic.
Yeah, or even you're so proud. Sometimes we're so proud of what we had to overcome that we fall in love with the picture, and the picture isn't necessarily very good. And I think we need to understand that a picture is just because we worked really hard on it doesn't make it good. And that also isn't we shouldn't take that as a negative, but take it as lessons to grow and to move with, compared to
this applies to like portrait photographers. In many cases, they'll say that financial officer was dead as a stone. It was the hardest portrait I've ever had to do to get a real smile out of that dude. And I finally did it. And the client said, my God, you made Bob look like a human no one else has. And so you go, woo! And you want to put that on your site? No, you've got 100 others where humans really connected with you, and the sparkle in the eye is true and the smile is genuine, and that's your skill.
Well, and that would be a good time to ask that client for a testimony, so you can put that on your website, right? To say, hey, they work really well.
You made Bob look like a human.
Yeah. So we'll be talking back and forth about pictures, and I know a lot of reviewers do like to ask questions like, where were you? What was this for? What was this, a hired job? are we able to just openly talk freely, or should we kind of hold some cards?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by,
Well, like if we did something for ourselves, maybe we'd be more proactive to say, no, this was my idea, this was my thing, and I went for it, compared to this was a job I was hired for, I had X amount
yeah,
of time.
and that's where personal projects, I think then it's very clear that it was your concept, you drove the bus on every aspect of it. And
Mhm.
that's a way for you to showcase it, you know, how you might execute. It doesn't have to be fine art in the personal projects, but it might be a way to showcase a completely different approach to corporate branding.
Yeah. And what should we talk about? Like, oh, this was a job that took 5 days. We had 5 days, or we went to 5 different places. And should we indulge ourselves into talking about the project in whole to showcase, hey, I can take on larger projects, or I can budget more. Should we talk about budgets or anything regarding money?
I do not recommend that. You can say that you would, that's not what you talk about in a portfolio review. If you're having a one-on-one meeting with a client at the clients and you're up for a job, of course, that's the time to say, I produced, 5 cities, a crew of 15, came in on time under budget, and here's what the client had to say about the experience of working with me. So I know you might have some concerns because this job you're considering me for is really intense and has a short deadline and
Mhm.
a lot of moving parts. That's the time when you could talk about that. But, if, again, is the backstory relevant to the moment in building a relationship? Is it an art buyer, an art director, a brand manager, a photo editor, a gallery director? What are their needs in looking at you? Are they trying to find a new resource? Are they trying to give you constructive criticism because they want to give back to the community? I have some colleagues that are not really looking for any new people, but they just really want to make sure that the next generation gets the inside scoop from a buyer.
Mhm.
And
And
you
they
need
might.
to, and ask them, I mean, why are you willing to raise your hand to give to the community in these portfolio review sessions? Are you looking to find new photographers? Are you just open to seeing new work just because you love good photography? Or do you want to please help me help you so that I can listen
Mhm.
better and give you information?
Yeah. And whenever we are, I know a lot of us might be going into a review wanting like a real, like when we think about critiques, it might be, oh, I don't like the way this thing was lit, or this style, we're looking for the style or lens usage and everything else. But a lot of times the reviewers aren't focusing on those particular items. They're talking a little bit more in like a bigger circle. How can we kind of listen to what we want to get back, but maybe get more out of it at the same time?
Well, um, I would say, like, if I'm looking at a photographer's work and then all of a sudden there's something that I see that is really off in terms of the color or the lighting or the composition, and it just looks like the ugly duckling in a
Mhm.
otherwise cohesive presentation, I might ask the photographer, do you see that my eye is being drawn off the page because you have this really bright spot on the top left? And this happened to me in a review. And they went, oh my God, I didn't even notice that. So you can ask if the reviewer, could give you direct feedback if they feel like there's something off in your presentation that could be improved. But things about lighting, composition, and lenses and all of that stuff, that nitty gritty stuff that you guys used like to talk to each other about, like I used a really long to get and I threw it up.
That's for our peer reviews, is what you're
That's for
saying.
your peer reviews
Yeah.
because you guys care about that. Reviewers want to know, like, what's your visual thinking? What's your aesthetic? What's your vibe, dude? I
Mhm.
mean, are you like, Do you have energy that makes me feel like I'd want to hang out with you for the tense shoot that I'm going to have to be on? Do you listen? Do you respond well? Do you play well with others? Because those factors are what I'm sorting on. And I have seen some amazing work, but the vibe of the photographer, I wouldn't want to hang out with them.
Yeah, right, because the way they are. Yeah.
And that's just me. That they're right for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's also part of the speed dating, right? Is to find out who we can party with. Because, you know,
Right.
as much as we all want to be accepting of each other, we still like to hang out with those that are familiar or, you know,
Because,
have
yeah,
some interests.
there is a synergy when you have a like-minded connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know this from working together, that there's a synergy that is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what every creative collaboration is really endeavoring to create. And those have many coefficients. Your subject matter, your aesthetic, your number of years in the business, your sense of humor, your ability to listen and be present, all of these things add up to the like, I want to get to know you better.
Mm-hmm. So I know we've been talking a lot about being mentally prepared and being present and listening and making sure we're showcasing ourselves. Have you seen presentations? When you see the presentations, are most people using a like literally just using their website, or have they done PowerPoints to showcase their work? Is there a way that we can use the technology to showcase our work in the best of light?
Well, what I've seen in these days, and because technology these days, you can get bushwhacked with, you know, at a moment's notice, you know, wonky connections. I would say two things. You can, again, it's about getting to know somebody. I'm okay with somebody, you know, showing their website, but to compensate for, and also maybe send me a link to a hidden gallery, but also to compensate for the tech snafus, to have a PDF
Mm-hmm.
at the ready. Your host might go down, something like that. And that a PDF also, if they really love it, you know, you could have you know, a selection of, like, if you're pitching, if you're advertising commercial, but you're meeting with a photo editor, you could have just a PDF of your editorial and just
Mm-hmm.
focus on that, because they don't care about your ad shoots. So in that case, you would have a custom presentation. I would discourage you against PowerPoint, because how many times have you been on a Zoom call where you see the tech of the PowerPoint and the, you know, side things, like, nah.
Keeping it clean.
Keep it clean.
Yeah. So I think if we follow that, what the KISS theory, right, that we've always
Yeah.
know about, but we tend to ignore most of the time, just to keep it simple and stupid, is the best way. And as you say, it allows for the conversations to happen as well, compared to having to worry about hitting this button, hitting that button, or opening this window or open that window. To be organized and ready for your presentation, compared to winging it, would be very beneficial.
Yeah. And again, you have to allow for serendipity. There might be an image where the reviewer goes, oh my God, did you go there? When I was 8 years old, that's where my you know, you can get off on a wonderful connected tandem. And it is more important for you to stay present and ask more questions about that response than, well, I want to show you the next 3 pictures.
Yeah, moving along too much. Make sure you're listening and making room for the happy accident. Even when we're taking pictures, we need to make sure we're making room for the happy
Right.
accident. We need to make sure we're doing that through conversation.
Because when you tickle somebody with an image that reminds them of their own life, that's a storytelling opportunity, which is a human moment when we're telling stories to each other. That's the real connection where humans have. So to short circuit that, because you have an agenda on how you want them to see all 20 images you prepared, you have totally missed the boat.
So So we have a lot, we're going to have a lot of different options for who can review, as you've mentioned, the commercial, the editorial, that will have art galleries, magazines, but I want to focus a little bit on yourself as being a creative consultant, and where we know what a reviewer is going to be looking for in a magazine or in an editorial side or in a commercial side. What would a creative consultant do? And I'll pick on Linda there too, because I know she's at the workbook, so she's a creative consultant as well. What kind of review would we expect from someone like yourself?
Do you want me to answer first or Linda?
No, you go first.
Well, I mean, this is what I do for a living, is to help photographers clean up their presentations, to edit and sequence and focus their work on their stated target market, because most photographers come to me with way too much stuff, way too many galleries, way too many misnamed galleries, no, sequence or flow, way too many images per gallery. So I'm there to try to help them tighten and refine and put their best foot forward once we've decided who they really want to go after. It's a marketing decision and it's a presentation decision based on what kind of work you want. And shooting for anyone who will hire me is not a defined market.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that people spend a lot of time worrying and wondering what a buyer wants to see, and you'll never know. That's unknowable. There's only one thing you can know, and that's who you are. So I'm a photo whisperer. I spend a lot of time looking at images to find out who the person is, because then I can better guide them to tell their own story, which is the only one that will ever sell.
And very well said, as usual, Linda. That is actually it, is that over time I'm listening and looking, because there is a uniqueness to each and every one of you. And I see that when I'm working with my clients, and I'm there to help hold a mirror to them by showing them what I think is their most exquisite work. And they'll go, really?
Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that when they're looking at the reviewers, that when you're picking like an art gallery or the ad agency or whatever it might be, they're really going to be focusing on just those areas and want to see just that. You're not going to be showing artwork necessarily to the ad agencies, but maybe a creative consultant, if you're worried about where to bring your stuff together, putting a few creative consultants in your reviewing package would really help you, find your avenue, and they'll give you that much more well-rounded
Right.
position.
And also recognize that creative consultants come from many different backgrounds. So, they have biases and experience. So you have to consider that as well.
Like every human. Come to find out.
So I would like to do a poll. How many people, just raise your hand, how many people are now doing video?
Yay.
A few. So my question is that important to showcase and share when you're in a review?
Yes, if you're going after a market that, needs that. I mean, certainly commercial, it's absolutely an in-demand skill right now. Any photographer, still photographer, that can offer the client the twofer, either themselves or their trusted colleague that they bring on every shoot that has that, is absolutely, whether it's, you're showing your whole reel, or you could have your highlight reel, very, 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 very short highlight reel, just to show your capabilities. I would not say, well, I did this spot and this spot and this spot. Here it is.
Yeah.
But invest with a kick-ass editor to get your sizzle reel together.
And cinemagraphs, little bite-sized moments where things move. People love that.
In so would you recommend, Carolyn, that, like, I know a lot of us are doing projects that are photo and video, so we should maybe have a demo reel, and then should we also maybe pick a project and say, hey, this is a short, maybe you don't want to show the 20-minute video or the 5-minute video or even the 90-second video, but just a short little clip of something like that? Or do you just simply mention that there was a video involved and invite them to listen or watch that later?
I would do the latter, because in 20 minutes, which goes by really fast, if you're pitching to an art buyer at an agency where they need, or a creative director, where they need still in motion, you can maybe, your whole 20 minutes could be spent just showing one project.
Yep.
And they would see nothing else. And so you could do that, but it's a risk, because there may be some other content from your other galleries that is more germane to their needs, and you don't know that till you've interviewed them to ask the questions. So, but on a one-on-one, obviously, you've done a lot of healthcare, you're pitching another healthcare client, you want to show what you did for this other healthcare client, and you want to show that you can do soup to nuts in terms of content.
Yeah. I just have, we have a couple more questions here. And this one is in regards to the follow-up. We get the ability to talk with people one-on-one. And I can't stress enough that we need to make sure we ask for their information during the interview, and also ask them if you can contact them. But what's the follow-up? What should it look like? What should we be doing in order to create a relationship, not just, a simple review?
That's a tricky thing in that, again, it's being present, and not everybody is right for everybody. And some reviewers feel put on the spot when a photographer that they have no interest in ever hiring says, "Can I have your email?" It's an awkward position, because any reviewer who really likes you and considers you a viable prospect for building a relationship with, either for themselves or for their referral network, will say, "This was great, Elliot, shoot me an email, and here's my email in the chat." And the people that you're going to be having reviews with have been around for a while. They know you have an email address and that you have one too. And it's really uncomfortable when someone I am so mismatched with says, "Can I get your email? Can I start hounding you on LinkedIn? Will you connect with me on LinkedIn?" I feel terrible. I don't want to reject anybody, but I don't want my LinkedIn network filled with people that I would not want my art buyer, art director, creative director, brand manager network to see that I'm connected to. So I don't want to say, "We're not a match, leave me alone." I don't want to say that.
And so the last question I have for you is, we kind of talked a lot that we love to talk about cameras and lighting and this application and that application, and this was what my struggle was today. But we also know that the camera doesn't take the picture, the photographer does. What's the one personality trait that over your career you have found the most attractive in photographers? And is it something that a lot of them had, or is it something that they had to learn?
Oh, I don't know the answer to the latter, if they had to learn it. But again, it comes back to presence. And that comes from being your true self, which I think everybody's true self, when they get down under, is kind and connected. And I certainly like, not taking oneself too seriously, and just being, kind and connected it's a winning combo.
So be yourself, be kind, be mindful, listen, and don't be too quick to make excuses for yourself. Might be a good place for some good notes to put up along the screen for all of us.
And be curious.
Be curious. Yeah, that's good. Make sure that you rebut and ask questions. And with that said, I do want to open, that's all I have for questions for Carolyn to share with us. Carolyn, is there anything else you want to say before we open it up to the question and answer time?
No, just what I was going to say at the end. I think it's like, these times favor authenticity and sincerity. This is not the 80s where everybody was being fabulous. There's something about what we've all lived through with the pandemic and now what's going on in Eastern Europe that is, people are getting real. And so I was just working with a client the other day about changing her bio from the third person to the first person. And she's a very generous, wonderful, present, great people shooter. And I said to her, Kate, it's okay to be you on your about page. Because she said, oh yeah, I know. But in the back of the day, I thought, I had to speak in the third person. It's like, no, these times favor authenticity and realness. And, we're not perfect. And we all know that now. I mean, how come behind the scenes are so popular?
Yeah.
That's the zeitgeist. It's not the 80s and 90s glitzy glam bullshit fake. So showing up and being authentic is such a relief. And so the more you get to know yourself and the more comfortable you are with yourself through being mindful and meditation and breathing, you're actually being on point on how to show up in this marketplace. I mean, think about the way the corporate branding has changed. Like, we're all just real people. You can come to work for us now instead of the, cliche images from, 10 years ago. So this whole shift to being real, we can all exhale. We get to be our imperfect selves, and we can connect with that imperfect person authentically on the other side of the meeting.
Wonderful. We had a couple questions come in. Matt, which is wonderful. Matt Reese is joining us from Columbus. He wants to know what your thoughts on leave behinds, because I know we used to have printouts and cards. How do we do a leave behind digitally?
That's a really good question. You can say, you could address exactly that. If we were in person, I would have a stack of postcards next to us, and I would know if you wanted to, you would pick one up and take it home. I can't quite do that here. If it's of interest to you, is there a digital leave behind that I, might be able to send you? Or since you now know my name and website, would that be for your organizational needs? Would that be preferable? Again, so it's the leaving room for the awkward mismatch, like we're not a match. That person will let you do the digital leave behind by putting them on your mailing list and sending a thank you, and here's my little promo thing, whatever. So you can have something like that created.
So more or less ask for their information without asking for their information. Let them have the opportunity to give it. And if they don't give it, know that
it's
don't
not
take
a match.
that don't take it personally. Just move on.
It's just not, you're not date material. They like blondes or they don't like facial hair, Elliot. Sorry.
And they don't like Mickey Mouse Legos. That's their problem.
So I mean, and again, because of these speed dating things that you're coming up on, all the reviewers are old pros.
So Dave was a journalist for 30 plus years, and I know he's having a hard time really pulling himself down to a specific theme, style, or genre. Do you have any recommendations on how he could really focus in on that type of, such a broad spectrum of work, but focus it into maybe 3 or 4 categories?
I can't, that's not what I could do in this talk. I will say that I have spoken at the Atlanta photojournalism seminars in years past on just that thing. And I have such a soft spot in my heart for PJs and the challenge that they have career-wise, and oh my God, you know. So I have worked with a number of PJs, helping them to shift into corporate markets, to be able to use their skills in a different area. But there are so many coefficients, and so many PJs are such good lone wolf problem solvers, that moving into sectors that are fraught with meetings and teams and deadlines and deliverables and briefs and layouts could make their head explode. So, you know, commercial is, you know, something advertising I would steer a PJ away from, because they're solo geniuses, and advertising is play well with a million people with their own agendas without wanting to kill someone. And so again, I could address, I do help people that are in markets that have been really hurt badly by the change in the industry, to try to find another path.
So maybe and I think that I know Dave has a wonderful group of people who enjoy his work and would be happy to maybe do one-on-ones with him to help him pull some things down, but also maybe, you know, finding a consultant who would take a couple afternoons, couple hours at a time to help hone that in. And it takes time to do.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, because it's not just your content and editing that. It's like I said, the personality and the people, who are you going to have to play with in these other niches that you're interested in going into? It's kind of like the lifestyle shooters that got decimated a few years ago, big budgets, that some of them decided they could go into weddings, and they could bring hair and makeup and stuff, like all of the production skills, to Queen for a day. And it did not bother them if they were dealing with Bridezilla psychologically. They had the temperament to deal in and moving, and they didn't have any judgment about, I used to be a big deal advertising lifestyle shooter, and now I'm doing high-end weddings. They're like going, I'll take that 50 grand.
I was just, they're probably making more on a weekend than they
Right,
ever were as a commercial shooter.
But you also have to, yes, but you also, if you move into B2C, have to be able to deal with family dynamics.
Yep.
And that might drive some photographers to drink. I mean, you just have to know that these sectors have these other non-photographic coefficients that you may or may not be suited for.
Well, with that said, about being suited for, we have a couple people who do a lot of fine art photography, and they're wondering how they need to set their, because usually a fine artist has a set of images. Do they just showcase them kind of all together, or do you say this is this particular series and then this is this particular series? Or
Generally for fine art, it's series, because you're exploring a subject, your aesthetic. I would not do the mishmash on that.
and how would a fine artist or someone who's looking to go into that that area, how do they really find their possible clients? Where do those people who actually buy art exist?
Everywhere.
NFTs, right? Just make them into
No,
NFTs.
that's the subject for a whole, that's beyond the scope of this talk. If you're presenting to a gallerist, they have a particular clientele, and actually it's really crass, but a gallerist is looking for inventory to sell to their clientele. And if your inventory matches their clients' tastes and expectations, you'll be considered. They're not there to promote you and make you rich and famous. They're there to make themselves rich on serving the needs of their clients and your inventory that they can put on the shelves. It's really crass, but that's what it is. I have a couple of dear friends that are gallerists. So, so you need to do your research, and, if you're doing, all black and white, really sensitive, nuanced street photography or whatever like that, and they're doing 5x6 pop color aluminum frame, ginormous, doesn't matter how good you are, you're not a match. They're selling to people that have huge houses that want huge artwork so that they look like they're huge.
So one last question here before we wrap up is we're about to show our love, our work, our what we poured our heart and soul into over maybe the last couple of years, or a personal project, or overcame some obstacles. Do we take the critique personally? Like how do we ensure that we don't get upset through the through the interview?
You know what I'm going to say. You've heard it enough. It's an inside game. This is just a moment in time. This is just one viewpoint, and let it go. It is, if you hold on to that, you're living in the past. And you are failing to see. I would say that, you know, gratitude journals is something that most of my clients I put on as an exercise. And it's, again, neuroscience. It brings you so fully into the present that it also is the balm for the stings of the inevitable rejections that we all will endure. And so if you have that daily gratitude journal, you'll realize that even if you got dissed in 5 in a row, that is not the total beingness of you from now until forever. It was that moment is gone. You have a roof over your head, you have a family, you have your health, and you can shift back into a higher vibration and be more present with the next opportunity. But if you don't do that and manage your mind and hold on to that, because these are your brain children, and it stings when your brainchild is said it's ugly. You know, someone said it's ugly. It's not like you're showing your widgets, it's your brain children. It can hurt. I'm not trying to make light of it. And it, you know, I understand that. But the neuroscience part of it, it is right there by being grateful and being back in the present and being ready for the next connection that might be the best one ever.
Yeah, the 6th one could be the charm.
Yeah. Right.
Well, Carolyn Potts, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Carolyn Potts is a creative consultant based in Chicago, Illinois. And if you want to read more about her, or sign up for her newsletter, or read more about how you can be more mindful in your daily routines, you can visit her website at cpotts.com, and we'll put that in the chat here as well. And you can also get in touch with her at carolyn@cpotts.com. And she also offers a free 20-minute, no obligation vibe check. So you're welcome to check in with her. And I think she has something special for everyone who came here tonight as well.
Yes, if you send me an email that says ASMP, Pittsburgh, Philly tip sheet, I am planning to create a little, sticky note size tip sheet that you could put on your monitor to remember what I think would be the 3 best things. I might add some more and have it right there. So you don't have to worry about reading over your notes, that you just glance up at it, and one of them is breathe. Oh. But I would be happy to, so I know it's you peeps that I could give that to. And again, you also can sign up, for my newsletter on the website, and some of these things are discussed. And yeah, I can't wait until this pandemic is over. I'd love to come see you guys again. And if I could, answer any, further questions in another webinar, because I know that we had to stay in the lane.
Hey, Elliot, can I say something?
Scotty Goldsmith, take the floor.
Yeah. First of all, I like the feng shui of your living room, Carolyn. It looks great. This is, Carolyn, I don't want to embarrass her, and she certainly didn't ask me to say this, but I've worked a little bit with Carolyn, and I can just say that from talking to Elliot and my personal experience, that Carolyn's able to foster and distill an individual's whatever, their work, their person, into helping that person specifically. She doesn't have a boilerplate approach to helping people, which I think is just fantastic. That she somehow she has this third or sixth sense of being able to figure somebody out and help them in their arena, like not, it's like a home game instead of an away game. But anyway, with that said, I just wanted to say a few kind words about Carolyn, because she has been very helpful to me in a very personal, specific way. So anyway, if you guys have a chance to take her up on her 20 minutes of whatever, I forget what you call it, I would try the 20 minutes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it turned into a lot more than 20 minutes. So
It turns into 3.5 years.
Oh, Scott, you're so sweet. I really, I'm a little embarrassed. I got the bright light, so you can't see if I'm blushing, but I am. I mean, that's so kind. I mean, like I said, my unique approach is because it keeps me from getting bored. I'm a creative. My background's fine art, photography. So the last thing I would ever want to do is boilerplate, because I would get bored.
yeah, well, no, it's impressive, and you guys didn't talk much about Carolyn's background, but you can find that probably online. But I think what helps her become so her ability to zone in on an individual is her incredibly diverse background. Photography is certainly a big part of that, but I won't take any more time right now. I'll let you guys look that up.
Well, Scott, enough already. I'm touched by your unsolicited, surprising testimonial.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, and there's a former client here as well, Garen. Thank you for showing up. And I had a pleasure of working with you several years ago, and I'm glad to see you on there. And I just love this chapter, and I would love to come back, like I said, and visit in person. So
nice to know that was a pleasure for you, Carolyn.
no, I really did. I had such a good time when we had that branding project together. It was really great.
Great, thank you.
Oh, there was one other question in the chat. Book recommendation for the neuroscience side of the work of things.
Oh, geez. There's a whole bunch of them. And, if you, again, shoot me an email specifically in the subject line that share your neuroscience geek stuff, and I will do that. But those that know me know that I'm, really big fan of transcendental meditation, because it's changed my life tremendously during these last 4 years that I've been doing it. No, actually, it was right after the election, 2016, when I got committed to it. It was a stress reduction technique that has served me in ways that I did it for those 4 years, but what I got out of it by being so committed to a daily TM practice was an increase in intuition, which serves my clients, and an increase in creativity, and all sorts of health benefits. So tm.org, I mean, the neuroscience of that is mind-boggling. And so that's one of my main things. But there are books, but there's also the creativity factor of doing that process. I have a client in Sweden that just was like, oh my God, changed my life. So I like it when photographers' minds can be still enough that they can hear the whisper of the muse. When you've got insecurity and mind chatter and worries and ruminating on the past, worrying about the future, your muse is like, I have something to tell you. Could you just turn down the volume? And so that's why this, turning down the volume of the mind chatter through meditation and mindfulness is so good for your creativity, because you'll get these flashes of intuition on a project that you might want to do that you couldn't have heard when you were obsessing. And we've got so many channels of incoming right now of information, 24/7 news cycle, doom scrolling, addictive behavior that we're programmed to do. Oh my God, how are we ever going to find the peace to hear our muse who's starving for our attention? So that's my lecture on that.
Wonderful. Well, Carolyn, I know that you have things to do this evening, so we want to say thank you to you. And you're welcome to stay and hang. I know a lot of the Pittsburghers are going to stay and hang, and Philadelphians and Columbusian, if that's how you say. Oh, he just jumped off. Never mind, Matt. You're welcome to hang as well. But I want to I just want to say thank you, and maybe a nice round of applause for Carolyn. And remember to reach out to her for those sticky notes for your preparation. And I think make sure you call each other. We can hang out with each other and to look at our work and encourage